Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you will find, well, everything that's related to the show, including the links to our social media, where we simulcast the radio show every morning on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and more stuff, including the podcast. And more, which is available, by the way, on CastBox, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and, of course, Spotify, our favorite. Also broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, Monday. Yay! I mean, I'm excited about it, aren't you? Sorry, that was my excited voice. Good morning and welcome to the program. All right, so what have we got for you today? Well, we got quite a bit of things going on this morning. Oh, do we have some weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth about our good friend Donna Ardwin? That's going to be great. We've got some discussions on how things are really settling out in the new House majority and the some of the committees, including this new bill from Andy Josephson. Maybe, just maybe, we will be maybe we'll hear a little bit about this morning from some of the people in the know. We'll talk about that. Governor Dunleavy wants to extend Medicaid coverage for new mothers. It's for the best of intentions, but at the same time, we've already got a third of the population on Medicaid. And I'm just asking, is that a good idea? I mean, really? Is that I'm asking for a friend. Can you tell me? Plus, Justin Rufford has, he's a mover and a shaker in the House. So much so that he has created his own caucus. Not exactly sure what's happening there, but we'll figure it out. Maybe sometime in this next week or so, we'll get a chance to talk with him and see what he has to say about that, the school bus driver strike, and more. Then in hour 2, we'll get a chance to talk with Representative Will Stapp from the Interior. He's going to come on board, and we're going to talk about everything that's going on in the legislature, his thoughts on it, what's it like to be a freshman legislator, and what he sees as some of the biggest issues coming up for this year. So buckle up. This is it. This is the good stuff. I just feel so full of it this morning. I just got to be honest with you. I am just feeling it like I'm just lots of stuff going on. How was your weekend? I suppose we could start there, huh? I mean, how was your weekend? Let's not push all the buttons that are not supposed to be pushed this morning. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? What do you say? What do you know? Let's get into that and figure it out. And how was it? Mine was good. I had a great weekend. It was Well, you know how it is sometimes when you got stuff that you have to do around the house. Like, you can see it as you're sitting on the couch. You can see, a mess across the room or something, things that you need to, stuff you got to put away. But you're you just want to relax, but you feel guilty. Well, I took care of all that stuff last week. I had a bunch of honeydew stuff that I got done. And so this weekend I was sitting on the couch going, wow, I don't really have to do anything. Oh, it was relaxing. It was just really, really relaxing. We got there. We got it all done. So I feel like it was a pretty good weekend. Pretty good weekend. Always too short, always, but we'll get through it. This will be a fast week, and then we'll get a chance. We'll get a chance to enjoy it again. Coming all up on a Good Friday. This week, though, we're going to do some deep dives on some stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on. So we're going to continue on here. All right. So where do we start? Oh, I want to start in so many different places. I guess we'll start by talking first and foremost about the governor's new plan to extend Medicaid coverage. It was announced on Friday. The governor has got a bill that would extend Medicaid coverage for new mothers from 60 days to 360 days. That was a pledge that he made during his last State of the State address last month. And he was talking about mental health care for new mothers as a key factor in preventing maternal deaths. The statement read, many women who experience postpartum depression don't have an onset of symptoms until after that initial screening, which is too late to seek treatment with Medicaid coverage. Nearly 16% of women in Alaska who experience perinatal depression or anxiety between 2015 and 2020 indicated that they could not access the needed treatments or support due to challenges with insurance or cost. He said he wanted to make Alaska the most pro-life state in the country last month, an act that would require support for parents as well as children. 36 other states have already extended their Medicaid coverage for new mothers, according to Ann Zink, under a provision in the Federal American Rescue Plan Act that allowed them to voluntarily do so. The state law requires the Alaska legislature to authorize voluntary Medicaid coverage before implementation. This is the same kind of thing that Governor Walker did in his, again, this is one of those optional programs that we heretofore have not participated in. The cost of that, $2.6 million a year. That's the preliminary estimates. The preliminary estimates of $2.6 million a year. And the American maternal mortality rates are the highest in the developed world and are worsening. Between 2018 and 2020, 8 Alaskans died while pregnant. And in 2013, a bulletin previously reported by USA Today noted 13 deaths between 2000 and 2011. So I guess we should break this down for just a second. Because I know the moment that you speak out against this possibility, you are probably going to be labeled as, well, why do you hate women? Why do you hate women and mothers and newborns? And why do you hate all? To which I will answer, I don't. I don't hate any of those things. I do not hate any of those things. But I guess my question becomes, is it the state's responsibility to do those things? Is it, again, we already live in a state where we take almost every optional Medicaid and Medicare program out there. And is this really the way to go? Is this really what we should be doing? Now, many will say, well, sure, of course, because we love and it's only $2 million. And it's all, in the terms of a $6 or $7 billion budget, what's $2.6 million among friends? The problem is if we don't start cutting and restraining spending when we can, then you might as well just throw your hands up in the air and say, whatever, take care of all of it. Not that this is not a very just cause. Not that this is not something that is very, good and important. But I think the question that we should continually be asking ourselves is it the government's responsibility to do these things? And that's the hard question. It is a hard question. There's no doubt about it. Because nobody wants to see anybody die. Nobody wants to see anybody, be left behind, or left without care, or whatever happens here. But under that argument, then the government could be responsible for everything in your life. And while I sympathize and and believe in the governor's plan to make Alaska, a supremely pro-life state, because I am definitely a pro-life person, I guess I'm wondering if by including and creating more government dependency, if that's not counterintuitive to what we're, the overall plan of what we're trying to do. Right? I mean, I kind of got to ask the question. And it's interesting. The Alaska Beacon is the one that is pulling out the numbers and everything else. The and Zinc was the one that talked about the mortality rates, that America in general has the highest maternal mortality rates in the developed world. So in a 2-year period, 8 Alaskans died while pregnant. That includes the pandemic era, 18 to 20. And a 2013 previously noted 13 deaths between 2000 and 2011. Okay, so since they included the numbers in this article, excuse me while I get down into the nerdy details for a second. Statistically, the statistical nerdy details, all right? So between 2018 and 2020, and does it actually show me the by year? Because that is, here it is right here. Because that is 8 people in a 2-year period, which would be 4 people. Let's see, Alaska had 8 people. It doesn't break it down as to where it came from or what. It's just a raw number. So there's no year breakdown or anything else. But not knowing whether or not the pandemic was involved in that, let's go back to the previous number, which is 13 deaths between 2000 and 2011. That's basically 1.1 deaths per year for 11 years, right? Something like that. Which, again, each one is tragic. And I don't want to undersell that. Those are all a tragedy. But if you're talking about one death amongst 700,000 people each year, but at the cost of $2.6 million per year, not a great return on investment. I mean, as far as from a raw, just looking at it, the cold, hard, cruel statistical facts, that, because we don't have a heart, because we hate children and women. But by that argument, I mean, there are plenty of things out there that we could use help with at $2.6 million a year to essentially stop the death of one person. Again, each one a tragedy, each one not good. But I guess the big question that I keep asking is it government's responsibility to deal with these things? Or should we not be engaging the private sector? Should we not be engaging the faith-based initiatives? Should we not be engaging, all these nonprofits that are out there working for the mental health of the? I mean, are there not organizations that, is it their responsibility? I mean, as volatile as the subject matter is, pregnant or, perinatal women who are postpartum, is it the government's responsibility? To which I would answer, no, it's not. That doesn't mean that I want to see these people suffer or be in pain or to die. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means we need to find another solution instead of looking to the big bad government for all the answers. For all the answers. That's what we need to do, in my humble opinion. All right, we got to go. We're going to continue with more here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will be back with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Well, that was it. That's a difficult subject to tackle first thing in the morning like that. But, I just saw the headline and then I was reading the article and I'm just like, this is all well and good, but that's not really what we're supposed to be doing, right? I mean, that's not really the purpose of government. But the general welfare clause, the general welfare clause. Yeah, I know. Exactly. That's what they'll say. Health and general welfare clause. But that, again, if you try to apply it there, the government would be involved in everything. People are going to say you don't like mothers and children. Welcome to the party, pal. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm hoping you might call in here in just a few minutes to talk more about this, to talk more about some of this other stuff that we're going to talk about. All right. I'm scrolling backwards here. Sore, spent a day digging out my trailer after the roof ran something. Nice quiet weekend with the family, Sid McHale. Too cold outside, so we watched movies. Oh, was it? Justin Ruffridge's Trouble. All right. I'm not even mad. Facebook didn't send me the notification 12 minutes late. I'm just amazed I got one. All right. Government busted healthcare, so they do. Okay, so Chris's answer is government busted the healthcare, so they do have a responsibility. I would argue that the more that they meddle, the more busted it's going to be, and we're never going to extricate ourselves from it. They may have busted it. I would not necessarily disagree with that. But to then say they have the responsibility to fix it, that's like, the monkey that you gave the crescent wrench to that beat the hell out of everything. You're like, well, he messed it up. He's got to fix it. He's a monkey with a wrench. He has no idea what he's doing. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. The problem isn't $2.6 million a year. The problem is that healthcare in this country has become inaccessible to the lower and middle classes. In a world that made sense, it wouldn't require a new mother to remortgage her home just to see a doctor. I agree with that as well. But again, adding to the overall, scope of things, still a problem. Okay. Okay. Oh, damn. Anthony is even more savage than I am. The cruel calculus of reality. If the average mortality is only one person per year, odds are no matter the amount of money thrown at the issue, that one person is still going to die. Again, if you want to get into the cold, cruel statistics, yes. I mean, this is why when we talk about firearm stuff, we try and talk about the actual numbers instead of the emotional damage, component of it, because that's where we're at, the same kind of thing. I'm hearing conflicting reports about whether or not the Chinese weather balloon even drifted over Alaskan airspace. Well, everybody said it did, but, there you go. All right. Wire first doctors, never trust the Chi-Coms. Good morning. Good analogy. We have a bunch of monkeys trying to fix things. I mean, yeah, you gave them a bunch of monkeys with sticks, and then what happened? A bunch of monkeys with sticks have broken the machine, and you're like, well, just they broke it. They've got that. Let them keep going. I don't want to die. I'm capable of working. No ailments prevent me working. Yet the state of Alaska is more than willing to pay me to sit at home, collect their checks. Help me, big brother. I don't want to die. Give me that shot. First one. Save me, but I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Yeah, I think there's a component of that, but all right, let's get back into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Okay, welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show continues. Just somebody in the chat room, Chris in the chat room said that, government busted the healthcare system, so they do have a responsibility to take care of all these people. And my analogy was, it's like you gave a monkey a pipe wrench and he just broke everything. And then you're like, no, wait, he's got a responsibility to fix this. So just let him keep swinging that thing. Right. And then somebody said, the analogy is more like a monkey broke it with the wrench, so then we sent in a dog with a screwdriver to fix it. I mean, I agree the healthcare system in this country is busted, but I would make the argument that it's busted because of the governmental intervention. Right? And the expectation that the same monkeys who broke it are going to be the same monkeys that fixed it is, I think, problematic, to say the least. Let's just say that. All right, some of the other stories that are going on. Justin Ruffridge. That guy's got a really big caucus. That's what Must Read says. Representative Ruffridge announces he has a big caucus. Justin Ruffridge tried to be named the House Speaker pro tem at the beginning of the session. That didn't happen. Then he tried to become House Speaker, and that too didn't happen. Now he says he's looped in 17 members into the House into something he is calling a freshman caucus. It's like the Bush caucus, only for people who've only been there a hot minute. He has been raising eyebrows. This is Suzanne Downing. He's been raising eyebrows since arriving in Juneau for his unorthodox moves. He has Democrat Andrew Gray of Anchorage alongside him as co-chair of the caucus. Gray is one of the most progressives of the folks in there, known for his stances on the Anchorage Assembly, representing the UMed district in Anchorage. Ruffridge represents Soldotna. Ruffridge said anyone in the House who has not served in the legislature until this year is welcome to join. That's a pretty exclusive club. I mean, but it does mean that Craig Johnson and Dan Sadler, who have in the past served the legislature, are not eligible. They're not welcome. So this brand new caucus, Ruffridge is, I mean, he's making a move of some kind. I don't know exactly what, but he's making a move. He said that our purpose in this caucus will be to discuss ideas, debate policy, and share those issues most important to the constituents who encompass districts from all over the state. Mostly, we will continue to build on great working relationships. After he announced the formation of the freshman caucus, whose actual number is uncertain and likely fluid, the Democrats all pounded their desks enthusiastically, including Louise Stutz, who banged the desk as loudly as she used to bang the gavel when she was the majority leader under the Democrats. It appears that there's not 17, but only 12 participants in the caucus. Of the 17 who would be included, 8 are Democrats, 7 are Republicans, with the other 2 being the independent Democrat loyalists, which would mean 10 and 7. That puts Ruffridge in charge of a Democratic majority group. And of course, it's the caucus meetings will not be open to the public. He is creating some chatter amongst the longtime Capitol observers, but we'll see whether or not this goes anywhere. Next time we have him on the program, we'll ask him about it, because, I mean, just interesting ideas. The freshman caucus, he's making a move of some kind, making a move. And then we come to the latest hot button issue, so much so that the ADN has now written about it again. Donna Arduin is back in the Capitol. They snap a picture, and they snap a picture of her in a hearing meeting, and they're like, oh my gosh, she was the face of the $1 billion budget cut, and she was sacked in 2019 because, and they go on to talk about how Representative Ben Carpenter, has stayed in touch and hired her to work as a policy advisor in Juneau. Now, he is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, which has been charged with creating a long-term fiscal plan for Alaska, which is good news because that's part of the fiscal policy working group. I mean, it's good news there. But there's some hand-wringing going on here. There is some serious hand-wringing going on over the fact that Arduin is there. Conservatives applauded her for her pursuit of balancing budgets without new revenues, but she has drawn criticism for an apparent indifference to the impacts the deep cuts would make to social services. This is going to be a continuing theme, and I find this hypocrisy just hysterical. In Alaska, she has been a symbol. This is the ADN. In Alaska, she's been a symbol for right-wing legislators who want the largest permanent fund dividend possible. The
greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it.
Yeah, it's only because we want the largest dividend possible. That's why we want paid for with vast budget cuts and no new taxes. Now, not everybody is thrilled that she's down there. And of course, anybody who's been following this will not find it surprising that the one person who is definitely not thrilled is the walrus. I mean, Sitka Republican Senator Bert Stedman, who is co-chair of the Senate Finance Committee during the most volatile budget fights with the Dunleavy administration. Excuse me, I'm having a hard time saying this with a straight face. Here's the quote. Stedman said there was no analysis by Arduin about the impacts of the cuts being proposed by the governor. There was no There was no analysis about the. Can I ask you a question, Bert? Have you done a single study analysis about the impacts of the PFD cuts over the last 6 or 7 years? Have you done a single analysis as you plunder the permanent fund dividend and affect the lowest 80% income earners in the state of Alaska to a tremendous? Has there been a single analysis discussed on that? No? Shut your pie hole. But this is the quote. I mean, this is unironic, folks. I mean, he's saying this with a straight face. Stedman said there's no analysis by Arduin about the impacts of the cuts being proposed by the governor. He said Arduin wasn't the right fit for Alaska. Quote, the economic damage that was left behind, we're still cleaning it up. What economic damage? The budget, by the time that was all said and done in 2019, was actually $85 million higher. All the stuff that was proposed and everything, the cuts didn't really happen. And then he chastised. Can you just see the walrus with this thing? He says, Stedman said Arduin didn't have the right skill set to work as an aide for the Joint Committee, the Joint Legislative Budget and Audit Committee. But he declined to say whether he protested her working there. He said he'll be fine with her working for the Ways and Means Committee because it's a House committee. It's a House committee. I can just do that. I can just do that. The backslap at the show, though, is pretty funny. Since her ouster from Dunleavy's office, Arduin has kept in touch with Alaskan politics while living in Michigan. She's periodically called into right-leaning Alaska radio talk shows and has continued to advocate for large dividends, spending cuts, and no new taxes. Is that what I am? Am I a right-leaning? Maybe she's calling other people, too. She may have been calling Fagan. I have no idea. But, it's only because we're the right-leaning shows, not the How many left-leaning Alaska radio shows are there out there? I'm just asking for a friend. It's just, we have to find a solution. They at least end the story on a good note that basically said, look, we've got to find a solution for what's going on. But this hand-wringing and the disdain that Stedman has over this whole thing. And again, in the absolute blatant hypocrisy of him saying, well, there's just she didn't make any analysis about the impacts of the cuts. Okay, so we're just going to cut the dividend and have been doing it since 2016. What are the no impacts? You didn't. ICER said it was had the largest negative impact of all the levers that you could pull. That would be the one that would be the worst. And you didn't do it. And you had no analysis, but that's fine. She has no analysis, and that's not fine. Which, Oh, let the hand-wringing commence. Welcome, Donna. Stirring up more trouble in Alaska than, Joe Vogler. I get that feeling. Stirring up more trouble, and I'm glad she is. Kitten Stedman. The disdain just drips out of this article. I can't even. No, it's a House committee. Sure, it'd be fine for her to work on that because it's a House committee. But she doesn't have the right skill set to work as an aide for the Joint Committee. Carpenter serves as the chair to the Joint Legislative Budget and Audit Committee with Stedman as the vice chair. He said Arduin didn't have the right skill set to work as an aide for that joint committee, but he declined to say whether he protested her working there. Well, that's because you're the vice chair. He's the chair. I don't know as you really have the horsepower to stop him. Carpenter's the chair. You're the vice chair. I think Carpenter gets to set those rules. So, pie hole. Oh, man. I just love to be a fly on the wall to watch the conversations. I wanted to see the heads explode The heads explode when they announced that Donna was going to be working for Ben Carpenter. I mean, I could just see the blood shooting out of people's eyes. Grab the duct tape, Gertrude. Here we go. All right, we got more coming up. We're going to continue here in just a moment. One final segment, and we're going to talk a little bit about this HB 22. And we'll get back to that when we return. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. I can't even do it. Scrolling backwards here. Dunleavy gets rid of Donna and keeps Ann Zink, but then we know he's an idiot. They should have shot it down, the balloon, over the Aleutian Islands. Good morning. Oh, help people. You added help people to my comment. I'm going back to your comment, Chris. I don't want to misquote you. Oh, they do have a responsibility to help people, right? Government busted healthcare, so they do have a responsibility. I'm sorry, I thought it was implied that you meant to help these people. I apologize for adding help people to the comment. That's just what the implication was based on the flow of the conversation. It has to follow Open Meetings Act now. What, the caucus does? It has to follow the Open Meetings Act? Has there been some change that I'm not aware of? A new Politburo. Slow news day, Donna says. She's in the chat room. Slow news day. No, I just found it hysterical, Donna. I just found it very interesting that the walrus had all those things to say. All right. The freshman caucus. Sounds like an oxymoron. Or maybe just a bunch of morons, says Sandy. Okay. David says, don't know if it's been covered, but did you guys see that the KPB Assemblyman Dirk Kevorkian writing that conservatives should all vote for Machicki for mayor so as not to split the vote? I mean, again, lesser of two evils seems to always be the choice that we're stuck with, right? Always seems to be the choice you're stuck with. Of course, the walrus has heartburn over Ardwin. Okay. His bloated budget is what's causing the damage. And we're supposed to worry about what? Right-leaning. Too many. The walrus doesn't get to say whether or not Donna is working with Ben Carpenter. And yeah, the left-wing radio, this is Air America Radio, was a dumpster fire. That's what I'm saying. Right-leaning talker, right-leaning Alaska radio show. Where are the left? Only on NPR. That's the only place, and that's the only way that left-leaning radio can really make it. As a commercial enterprise, it's been a dismal failure across the country. There are very few liberal radio networks or shows out there. They're almost all center and center-right. The only way they could do it is being propped up by the government. With the NPR. That's what it is. Let's see. Yeah. Now we get to watch Randy beat the horse to death again. Okay. Can we at least address the reality that the super villainous boogeyman that the media would make us believe China is sent a freaking weather balloon with a GoPro on it to spy on us. Maybe they got budget issues too. I don't know. Is that what it was? A weather balloon with a GoPro? I mean, it wasn't like real time. They're sending it back to their satellite surveillance. I don't know. I haven't read enough about it to figure it out. Oh. Anyway. Well, there we go. That's I'm all caught up on all the comments for this morning. Do me a favor. Would you like and follow the show on Facebook? Would you subscribe and ring the bell on the YouTubes? Got to mute it. I will, in fact, drop you a link right onto the thing where you can just go over there real quick. You can come right back to Facebook. But if you haven't, would you go over to the YouTube channel and would you like or would you subscribe and ring the bell? Subscribe and ring the bell. Just go over there real quick. Hit subscribe. Jump back. Gonna kiss myself. Jump back. Go kiss myself. You can jump. You can come right back. 403 subscribers. I need 1,000. I've got 4,000 followers on Facebook, and I can't get 1,000 of them to go over to YouTube and subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube. It is such a weird thing that it's such a different user base for both platforms. Isn't that weird? I mean, some people are just like, no, I could never watch YouTube. It's just too. Facebook, yes, it's easy, but I could never. And the other, YouTube, and I could never watch Facebook. And I know there are pros and cons to both, but if you could just go over there and subscribe and ring the bell, you'd be doing me a huge favor. Ow, huge favor. Huge favor. All right. Here we go. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do this thing. Okay, thank you, and good morning. Bacon time. Who said bacon? Bacon. Thanks for coming in and being part of it today. Hour one continues. We just finished up with all the heartburn that is Donna Arduin back in the legislature. But now we've got a discussion over the pension plan. There's a bit of shenanigans going on in the legislature, specifically in the Community and Regional Affairs Committee, where apparently Andy Josephson has been strong-arming some stuff behind the scenes. They fast-tracked his HB 22, which is the defined benefits plan, and have pushed it out of the Community and Regional Affairs Committee. But they were a little bit of, let's just say they were a little premature. Let's just say they were got a little ahead of themselves. He took advantage of freshmen in the House, specifically, I think, talking about C.J. McCormick, who's the committee chair, wielding his superior knowledge gained in years and years of legislative service. HB 22 passed, was rushed through the House CRNA committee in its first committee of referral and managed to get approval within 2 weeks without a fiscal note. Now, that's the problem, because you still don't have any idea how much it's going to cost. You got all these people to vote for it, and they're like, oh, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Let's do it. It sounds good. Members of the committee who voted in favor in a vote of 4-2 included C.J. McCormick, the Democrat, Donna Mears, the Democrat, Rebecca Himschuth, the Independent Democrat, and, yes, you guessed it, leader of the freshman caucus, Justin Ruffridge, the Republican. All voted in favor of it without a fiscal note. with no understanding of how much it's going to actually cost. Meanwhile, Republicans Kevin McCabe and Tom McKay over here beating the drum of fiscal common sense said, whoa, we have no understanding of how much this is going to cost. How can you vote for it when it's But the good news is, technically, it did not pass out of the committee. Now, I don't know what exactly happens from here, because technically it didn't pass the committee because it has to go to state affairs, but it cannot do so without a fiscal note, because state affairs will not accept the bill without a fiscal note. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Do they just put some kind of amended fiscal note into it and let the vote stand? Is it a complete and total do-over? Oh, by the way, just in case you were wondering, the CRNA committee made another boo-boo. They did not publicly advertise meetings for next week. So you can't do a do-over for at least another week. I mean, this thing's just like... On top of that, all the finance committees have started to really pull together, and so now you're going to lose members of the CRNA. When are you going to be able to get it done? HB 22, according to Representative Kevin McCabe, who's the committee's vice chair, was being rushed through. And he pointed out that even the letter from the Anchorage Assembly, the most liberal body in the state of Alaska, pointed out and encouraged the legislature to, quote, to diligently vet House Bill 22 and Senate Bill 35 in a committee and in collaboration with the munis to produce a final passage of the bill. He was pointing out the key words, diligently vet. He pointed out the committee hasn't even been given the opportunity to talk to the municipalities to find out what it's going to take, to find out what the actual cost is going to be. He said a rough estimate shows it could cost one fire department in the Mat-Su $400,000. According to the Division of Retirement Benefits, this is the kicker right here. Remember, we still have a $7 billion unfunded liability from the previous defined benefits package. Remember that? Yeah, $7 billion. But according to the Division of Retirement Benefits, there are 31 communities or employers that are still in arrears in paying the still on the books defined benefits. Still in arrears. They have not paid. We haven't had a defined benefits plan since 2006. We're going on nearly 20 years, and they are still in arrears. You want to add to that? I mean, it's a... And remember, this HB 22 is the most conservative of all the bills. That's the most conservative of all the defined benefits bills that are out there. Yeah. I mean, I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, and I don't know exactly what the do-over is going to look like. But I know people are going to... I mean, this was a misfire. I think Andy Josephson thought, well, we'll just force it on through and it'll be fine. But then again, now it's going to hit this stumbling roadblock of the fact that it doesn't have a fiscal note, and everything's starting to pick up speed, and it's going to be a hot mess. The bill goes to State Affairs Committee next, but since it cannot go without a fiscal note, it's in limbo and may remain in limbo for another week or more, while the committee chair, C.J. McCormick, shakes off the trick that Andy Josephson pulled on him by advising him to push it through quickly. Not a good day. Not a good day to be C.J. McCormick on this thing. This is just, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. All right, let's get things ready. Coming up in hour 2, we're going to be talking with Representative Will Stapp. He's going to be joining us here, and we're going to, we're going to talk about pretty much all of the stuff that we just covered, plus his exposure and his idea of what the whole thing looks like. We'll ask him if he's joined the new freshman caucus and what his thoughts are on that as well, and so much more. I mean, I think this is going to be, it should make for an interesting conversation this morning with some insight from the mind of somebody who's just fresh and brand new like a shiny penny down there. We'll see how Will feels about it once we get him on board as well. Coming up tomorrow on the program, Brad Keithley will be joining us. And I think we need to talk with him about that article about Donna, because he's constantly going on about the one thing that this legislature seems to fail to do is to do analysis on the impacts of the cuts or the programs or the, either the increases or the cuts. Remember, he always asks the question, who pays, right? I mean, that's an analysis, a cost analysis of who is the most impacted by the increases or cuts there. I think he'll be very interested to discover that Bert Stedman all of a sudden has a very, very large soft spot in his heart for this kind of can't do it. There was no analysis about the impacts of this. No analysis, just in case you were wondering. So we'll talk about that with Brad Keithley tomorrow, and then we'll head on over to talk with Chris Story, get our weekly life coaching update, which is our positivity. It's our PMA. It's our positive mental attitude boost. That's what it's all about in hour 2 tomorrow. All right. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Time to take a quick break, get you some news, and pay some bills around here. And then when we get back, we'll be talking with Representative Will Stapp, Willard. Sorry, I'm butchering his name. It's Will Stapp. He's going to be joining us in hour 2, and we'll see what he has to say about his new position there in the legislature. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this. Rick says, where the hell is the bell? It's right next to the subscribe button. Right next to the subscribe button. After you hit subscribe, it should give you a little bell, and you have a choice of getting all of the notifications, personalized, none of the notifications, or you can unsubscribe. So if you're going over to YouTube, you can go over there and push the subscribe button, and then it should turn into a little bell right there. Michael, have you ever thought of running for governor? My God, why do you hate me? Why do you hate me? I'd never make it I did one stint as a politician in my local borough assembly, and that was enough for me. I did 2 stints, actually, but that was enough for me. I could not be governor because throat punching is a punishable offense. That's all I'm saying. That's why I could not do it, because I do not like to work with some of these folks. Okay. Let's see. The new House Majority Bipartisan Caucus. The astute the rest of the Republican caucus, Bush Democrat McCormick actually voted against Tilton to be Speaker, yet he was appointed Community and Regional Affairs. I don't hate you, but your name notoriety might assist. Well, yeah, I mean, it would definitely be notorious, that's for sure. That would definitely be for sure. Okay. Couldn't find the bell, says Rick. It's pretty easy. It's right there. I mean, I found that when you go to a channel and you look at a channel, let's see, what am I looking for here? I'm just looking for, okay, I'll look to that right there. When you hit subscribe, it turns into a bell, and then you hit all. When you click on the button on my thing, it says subscribed, and then it says all. As soon as you hit the button, it turns into a bell. You hit the subscribe button, then it turns into a bell. You use the drop down, you go all the way to the top, away you go. Simple, short, simple, easy, right? So do I need to show you? Do I need to show you a video? Shall we discuss it? Shall we do this right here? There we go. So hey, no, come here. So when you go over to, wow, I got to get, there we go. All right. So when you go to a website and you hit subscribe, it turns into a bell. Oops, I got to do it on the other screen. Turns into a bell. Then you use the drop down and you ring the bell by hitting all. See? That's simple. That's simple right there. All you got to do, just go to it, ring it, hit the subscribe button, drop it again, ring the bell. You're all good. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Just trying to help you there, just in case you were wondering. Okay. Let me go back over here to the comment room. Will Stapp is now in the green room. I see him over there. We're going to get to him here in a hot second and check his audio and everything else. Let's try this thing. See what happens when we push this button. Oh man, look at that. We get 2 people up. Good morning, Will. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Michael. How are you?
No complaints, sir. No complaints. You all ready to dive into this with both feet?
Oh, sure.
All right. Well, be excited. We're gonna hit this hard here in just a minute, and we'll kick things off here. We're about 2.5 minutes away right now, so we'll be back to you, and we'll get things squared in just a moment. So hold the line. I'll put you back into the green room, and we will continue with our discussions right up until we hit the top of the hour. All right. It was the Monday Morning Tech Minute with Michael. Yes, I've just tried. Hey, it was for my own benefit. I was trying to show people how to do it. Just push the subscribe button, then ring the bell. That's all you do. It's simple. It's easy. Anybody could do it. Even I could do it. That's what's good about that. All right. What else do I got? What did I not hear? Oh, we didn't talk about the school bus driver strike. Still going on. What is this? Day 5 of work days, day 5. I'm just so glad I'm so glad I do not have kids in school right now. Having to try and juggle that kind of stuff and oh man. That would be a serious problem. I'm so glad that we don't have to deal with that right now in my household. I mean, everybody else in the Matsu has to deal with it, just not me. Okay. We talked about that. And the Donna Ardwin thing.
There's no analysis by Ardwin about the impacts of the cuts being proposed by the governor. She's just not the right fit. Blah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bert. I'm sorry, Bert.
That was just BS.
I'm sorry, Bert. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry. That's fine. We'll just deal with it. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio, hour 2. Up next, Will Stapp, our guest. Let's do it. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
That was just BS.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
On the internet at the website michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find links to the audio-only live stream, links to the podcast, links to our social media sites, and more. Plus, on plain old regular terrestrial radio, which is still free, by the way, around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translator, The Michael Dukes Show, where we broadcast live every weekday, Monday through Friday, to bring you the freshest Alaska news that we can possibly, and commentary. The commentary is important. I'm just saying right now, the commentary is important. We're continuing today. We just finished up with some of the hot news there in hour one. Now we're going over to be joined by our guest, freshman legislator from the Interior. Will Stapp joins us this morning, and we're going to have a conversation with him about, well, everything that's happening and what his experience has been so far. And we're going to talk about some of the hot news of the day and what goes on from there. Will Stapp, our guest, and he joins us right now. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, Michael. Thank you. How are you?
You know, I got no complaints, my friend. It's Monday, and I'm still breathing. That's a plus. That's a big plus here. So, Will, it's been a while since we talked. In fact, I think it was on the campaign trail last time that we got a chance to chat with you before you were elected. And here you are, a freshman legislator down there for the first time, getting your feet wet. So I guess first and foremost, initial impressions. What do you think now that you're down there and you've seen how the sausage is starting to be made, I guess, more than anything else? Was it, does it fulfill all your hopes and dreams, Will? I mean, is it everything that you could possibly want and then some?
Yeah, well, I tell folks I'm always motivated by being a glutton for punishment, Michael. So all the fun, wonderful things that you learn kind of by doing your due diligence in this building always make you excited that there's always about a million more problems that exist that you didn't know when you got down here because you were only aware of the million that existed before you walked in the building. So, right,
exactly. Well, that's part of the problem. You think you know everything, and then it turns out that you know nothing, Jon Snow, because you had no idea of all the stuff that was going to be happening and everything else. Will, let's talk for a minute. I mean, I guess first and foremost, since it's in the news, what's the deal with the freshman caucus? Are you a member of this freshman caucus that's been put together by Justin Ruffridge? And what are your stated goals? Or give us some background here.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I spoke with Justin a couple of days before he had made that announcement, so I knew that it was going to be a thing. I like to call it a true freshman caucus, apparently, because we don't like red shirts in this building. That's the first thing that I noticed. You can't be a coming back and be a new freshman. You got to be a true freshman. But I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I kind of think it's just a continuation of conversations that we had the privilege of having with some of our newly elected colleagues over just kind of coffee talk. But you never know, Michael. I mean, I told the reporter at the ADN, I made a joke, and I'm a little sad he didn't print it. I said, I don't know if we're talking about football on Monday or plotting coups on Tuesday. So, but
well, good. I'm surprised he didn't print that, Will. That just seems.
I know. I'm a little disappointed, to be honest. So.
Well, let's talk about your experience with organization and committee assignments and everything else. Now that you've seen again how kind of that process has gone through, Let's talk about your impressions on the organization and how things fell out. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's a great, privilege not only to be down here being new, but to be a part of a Republican majority organization. Republicans haven't been in power in the House for, I think, 6 years prior to this year. And given the nature of the organization of the other body, I'm just really proud of my colleagues, not just the new ones, but the incumbent ones who kind of all understood that it was very important that we attempt to counterbalance the other organization and help support our values throughout the state. Because I think that based on the conversations in terms of spending that are going on now, it would have been a whole lot worse if we had been in the minority in the House as well. So.
No, I mean, I think it's good to see. I like seeing it. Your committee assignments, were you out there soliciting it? Was it a surprise? What kind of conversations happened on figuring out where you were going to be?
Oh, I don't know if it was that much of a surprise. I'm a Fairbanks Republican, Michael, so we kind of have a long tradition in Fairbanks, as you well know, of representatives who are serving on House Finance Committee. My predecessor served on House Finance. Actually, last year, Fairbanks had 3 representatives on House Finance, and this year we have 3 members from the Interior on House Finance as well. So I guess the tradition just decided to continue. So.
Will Stapp is our guest, House District Rep for District 32, which is South Anchorage at Fort Wainwright. Will, we're seeing a lot of conversations going on about the big issues that are facing us in the state. Of course, the big things that are being discussed right now are, one, education funding, right? This is the BSA increase and potentially other things, whether it's forward funding or other educational components, which is being discussed right now. And then the second thing is the defined benefits program, which has got bills in both the House and the Senate, multiple bills to deal with all this kind of stuff. So let's talk for a minute about this. Let's start off with education. There's already been a discussion about increasing the BSA by $1,000 and cries that, well, that's not enough. It has to be more like $1,200 or $1,500 or $1,800 to really make up for it and everything else. Yet there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of discussion about accountability, about what the product looks like when it leaves the factory, so to speak, the actually scholastic achievement and everything else. So give me your thoughts on what is being discussed with the school funding and where you're at on this discussion and debate.
Oh, sure. I guess kind of start, I tell the joke when I came to this building about 2.5 weeks ago now. The number I heard from the other body and some of the members was they wanted to spend $80 million on the BSA. And then a couple of days later, that was $110 million. And then last week it was $200 million. And I guess yesterday it was $300 million. So the joke I make is, hey, before the end of session, the BSA increase is going to be like 1.5 billion, at the rate we're going here in the building. So my fundamental philosophy is pretty simple, Michael. Basically, education is a fundamental good thing. Obviously, we want to be able to solve existing challenges in workforce and employment development, but we have to be aware that there is actually a finite amount of money that we can spend on things. And historically, we need to look at past performance of where we're at historically and where we're actually trying to go. So I tell folks, I think it's a good thing if you actually have quality education. I think that's a worthy thing to be able to help assist in. But the problem in Alaska is, really since the early 2000s, we've been one of the bottom performers in education outcomes. There's a lot of reasons for that. But unfortunately, many of those factors have never really been included in funding mechanisms. And I always tell folks what's monitored will improve. And unfortunately, my position is, I'm certainly sympathetic to the challenges that school districts face in terms of funding due to inflationary pressure. I would basically consider a BSA increase only if I knew that we could actually change outcomes that would be more positive for students, if that makes sense.
Well, no, I mean, look, Will, I think your first part of that statement where, you support, education for a good education. I mean, who's going to get up there and say,
Yeah.
well, I don't really support a good education for kids. I think that they should all be dumb as rocks and do that. But you're right. I mean, this is kind of the conundrum that they put you in. They make you defend yourself for you to say, well, of course I support children and good education. The problem is that when you ask for that accountability, that's part of the problem. That's the part that they don't want because you're going to pay money for a product, which in this case is education, good, highly educated children. Well, I mean, not even highly educated, who can pass a basic written and, reading exams and writing exams and math and do the basic stuff instead of being in the 48th, 49th percent, of the bottom of the 50 states. And so it's not surprising. Yes, of course, it has to have metrics that connect the two. Is there any serious discussion on that right now?
I know that people in our body are certainly having discussions. I obviously can't speak for the other body, Michael, but keep in mind, the BSA is just a component of what's called the foundation formula. So reality is if you're looking for performance-based indicators in terms of education, you either take a crack at the structural foundation formula itself, or you look for funding mechanisms that exist outside the BSA. If that makes sense. So those would be kind of the ways that you try to achieve that objective. Not dissimilar to the Reads Act from last year. If that makes sense.
Right. Well, and I agree. I mean, we need to be looking at accountability at all the levels. And the problem with the BSA is that as we give them more money, there's only so much that actually makes it into the classroom. A lot of the BSA is sucked up by overhead, administration, executives, hard costs associated with brick and mortar and things like that. So by increasing that, are we actually getting a better education, or are we just increasing the overhead and the and the administrative costs and those kind of things?
Yeah, and I mean, you're kind of exactly right. I mean, are you just throwing money at problems at that point, or you're actually trying to better outcomes? And I think for me, I ran on outcome-driven things. So keep in mind, our state already spends a ton of money on stuff. And we should be very kind of fiscally conservative about the things that we want to spend money on. And again, if there's a worthy goal and we can affect better outcomes for people, then I'm certainly interested in taking a look at it. But if we're just going to be giving money to folks for the sake of giving money to folks, that's probably not something I would be interested in. If that makes sense.
Well, if you look at the coverage of this too, give me your thoughts on this, because the coverage of this in the various news outlets has been education has been underfunded for so long and we haven't increased and we haven't, and everything was focused on the BSA, and there was no discussion of the foundation formula, additional spending, all these other things. I mean, if you were just somebody who was not that well informed and all you did was read the paper, you'd think that we'd been shortchanging these kids for years. Instead of having a 35% increase in education funding over the last 9 or 10 years, they don't talk about the billions of dollars that have been spent outside of the BSA. I mean, what does that do for you as a legislator? Kind of that. I mean, I guess I want to say it's like disingenuous to put the articles out that way without mentions of all this other spending. But how do we educate people, and how does that affect your decisions on this?
I think it's it's kind of a product of being in this kind of position, Michael. I tell folks, I'll give you an analogy, right? Like a lot of folks will come, especially teachers. One of their arguments is, hey, when it comes to our retirement system, we don't have Social Security, right? So we have no standard type of mechanism in which we have standard retirement like everybody else does. But there's a second aspect to that typically doesn't get up, which if people are enrolled in the TERS system, if they wanted to opt into Social Security, they can basically do that anytime they want just by requesting a vote of the ARM board, right? So you got to be able to do your due diligence and kind of read between the lines and understand that being new, people will absolutely try to take advantage of your ignorance in the process and ignorance in some of the things. So a lot of times ideas will sound really good, but you always got to be a little cautious to make sure somebody's not tricking you into trying to do something that you don't actually want to do. That makes sense.
Something like along with Reagan's trust but verify.
Verify, exactly.
Trust but verify. If it sounds too good to be true, quite possibly it's not true. All right. Will Stapp is our guest. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the defined benefits program. We're also going to talk about Will's bill he's got a spending cap bill that he's putting together. I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about the governor's new proposal for expansion of Medicaid with Will as well. The Michael Duke Show continues. It is your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Will Stapp, our guest. We return with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break and ready to go here. Will Stapp is our guest. And we'll go back to them. Will, I always like to kind of take a pulse especially for new folks there. What's the biggest surprise since you've been down there for 2 weeks now? Whole 2 weeks, boy. That's you're going to get some education.
I mean, it's kind of not surprising. Last time I was on your show, Michael, when we were talking about taxes and stuff like that, I said, I grew up in the Seattle suburbs, and my experience with my Democratic friends was always the amount of revenue never really mattered. They would always find kind of a way to spend all of it. So typically what I tell folks is I'm a little shocked by the amount of the big ticket spending items and ideas that are kind of circulating through the building, irrespective of existing revenues. I tell folks, probably one of the most, disappointing things for me to know that probably one of the first consequential votes I will be taking in this building is more than likely to tap the state's savings account to pay for last year's budget, right? If that makes sense, through the supplemental, right?
Yeah, supplemental appropriations to basically cover the overages of what was overspent, right?
Yeah, and people say, well, in Alaska, you can't bind one legislator to another, right? Legislation to another, once the 32nd to the 33rd, for example. But effectively, if you're going to draw on savings to pay for the previous year's budget that people voted on, that you weren't even in the building on, I don't know what else you would call that.
That's pretty binding. I mean, it's pretty binding when you say, oh, by the way, you got to pay for our past due bills over here. You got to do that, and if you don't, boy, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, look, there really is no, it's money you already spent, so you basically are required to fund it, right? I mean, you can't really just not pay for stuff. So, but
the irony of the fact that is the largest budget in state history, and yet we still have to go back and true it up is, well, it's a little scary, Will. Let's just say it's a little scary.
No, it is, especially when you start kind of looking around, at funding sources and oil projections, and kind of understanding that there are a lot of people kind of going around who kind of believe that we actually have a lot more money available than we really do. So coming here next week, we're going to get the amendments to the supplemental, and we're going to get the new revenue projection, and we're going to get some of these basically liabilities that are known liabilities on the operating budget that haven't been reflected in the governor's budget at this point. And reality will kind of paint a different picture than a lot of folks, I think we have in terms of revenue or as far as expenditures. And we can get into that too. I mean, you hit on some of them already with Medicaid. So
yeah, no, well, there's going to be a lot of discussion. It's amazing that when I often liken the budgets in the state of Alaska to that scene from Pirates of the Caribbean, where they're running back and forth from rail to rail on one side of the ship, trying to rock the ship. And that's the way we seem to always be. We've got a lot of money. We got more money than we could ever spend. Oh my God, we're out of money. What are we going to do? We're going to have to tax. Whoa, we've got a lot of money. I mean, it's just like, they never think about, we should probably just, stand in the middle. And, when we got too much money, we bank it, or, quote unquote, too much money. And when we don't have enough money, now we can draw on the money that we saved when we were rich, and now we can do it. But it's always this rush back and forth, one way or the other, to, hyper spending, to crisis management, because now we have a deficit.
Yeah. And that's really kind of the driver behind the the spending cap constitutional amendment bill that I'm carrying. Obviously, the idea originates from Senator Kaufman, former Representative Kaufman, to really try to start to make some structural changes, hopefully to change long-term behavior. The analogy I give folks is it's like bowling with the bumpers up, Michael. I'm not that great of a bowler, so I tell folks I can't always tell people how to throw a strike, but I know if you put the little guards up when you bowl, you can stop people from bowling a gutter ball every time. And maybe one pin for frame is probably a lot better than gutter balls all the time. So
yeah, no. Well, I think that is definitely, if you're looking for a one thing that's going to hold the size and scope of government down, a spending cap would be the way to do it. Now, it has to be the right spending cap, the right kind, because we have one now that's useless.
Yeah.
But, I agree. I think that's important. All right, Will, hold the line. We're jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right, welcome back to the program. Will Stapp is our guest. He continues with us now as we jump back into it here, talking about a variety of things. Before we talk about your spending cap bill, which I think we want to spend a little bit of time on here, I do want to talk about the big elephant in the room, which I think has the potential to really hurt the state of Alaska in the long run, and that is this revival of the defined benefits program. Now, the listeners know, 2006, we made the change from a defined benefit to a defined contribution. The main reason for that is because we were $13 billion nearly upside down in unfunded liability. It was bankrupting the state. It was costing municipalities hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year. And it was a disaster. And yet it's been revived. And now it's been rushed through the Community and Regional Affairs Committee. Got passed out without a fiscal note, which can't happen because it's got to go to state affairs. And so, and the big thing here is that we keep hearing about, oh, this is going to save us money. Oh, this is going to be cost neutral. Oh, this is going to be, but there's no fiscal note. I mean, this is problematic. I mean, history shows us that defined benefit plans are a good way to put yourself in a fiscal crisis. I mean, if you look at the track record of them across the country, very few have ever made sense. Give us your thoughts on the defined benefits plan.
Yeah, so I think context first. Oh, man. So starters with bills. I mean, in the House, this is, I think, a rendition of firefighters and police bill. So keep in mind, firefighters and police are a relatively small segment of the public sector employees. But the real risk, the real financial and actuarial risk behind this is basically violating some basic principles and benefits. I come from the employee benefits side in the private sector, in insurance, and we have rules governing ERISA law and non-discriminatory testing. And basically, the big problem the state has is, hey, how can you effectively treat everyone equally if you start carving out subsegments of your own employer base and giving them special benefits as opposed to not other people?
You're talking about the first responders, how it's only going
exactly.
to the first responders.
So I don't believe you can do that. I believe if you were to give a subsection of Alaska State employees defined benefits, I think you'd probably immediately get sued and maybe you'd lose. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would do, if you wanted to go back to, let's go defined benefits, looking at Senator Keel's bill is probably like the more honest kind of example of that, because his bill wants to give it to everybody, which I think is what you'd end up doing anyways if you started to give it to some people.
Well, I think that's working as intended, by the way. I think that was the whole point of this, is that you give it to the easiest subset to give it to, and then they know that inequity would cause a legal challenge that in case would then expand it to what Keel is talking about, which is 40,000 employees.
So that's kind of step one. Step two would be to say, okay, the nucleus behind the return to defined benefits is an attempt. In my opinion, it's a bad one because of the actuarial risk, but it's an attempt to try to solve the workforce development challenges that we have in the state of Alaska, especially in government. We have huge vacancy rates across all of our departments, including public safety. So those are real challenges that we have to commit to tackling. But I tell folks, you want to do that with the understanding that you do have a finite amount of money, and is it worth basically breaking the bank over? So the real problem with defined benefits is the actuarial risk to the state. So as you mentioned earlier, the state has a current existing unfunded liability of $7 billion for our Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees. Keep in mind, we got rid of that program 16 years ago now. And there's also some hidden factors that are already, geared to kind of drive that liability up. One is the market performance of the fund. And two, and I haven't heard anyone really address this, keep in mind, a year ago, some teachers sued on behalf of, they were in Tier 1, Tier 2, they didn't vest, they left their place of employment, they came back in Tier 4, and they sued the fact that they should be allowed to continue to vest in Tier 1. And of course, the Supreme Court ruled, that you can't take away benefits once someone is in the program, like it says in our Constitution, Michael. So now you got a potential additional risk of a bunch of employees that might have started in Tier 1 and Tier 2, and maybe they were teachers, maybe they were public sector employees. They left their place of employment prior to vesting in the retirement system, and they might be able to come back now and revest in those programs, which of course drives the overall liability up.
Right.
So the overall point is, hey, before we start talking about adding long-term financial liabilities to the state, especially on the operating side, maybe we should kind of figure out how we're going to deal with our existing long-term liability of $7 billion. At least that's where I would come from.
Wait, you mean if the house is on fire, we shouldn't pour gasoline on it? Is that what you're saying? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the monkey with the pipe wrench beating stuff up. And I thought, the real solution with the monkey beating everything in the pipe wrench, Michael, is to give him a flamethrower and tell him to try again,
Right, Riley. You could fix it now, just burn it all down. I mean, look, I'm all for people being treated well. Don't get me wrong. I think that's good. But to think that the naivete of basically saying, oh, this will be revenue neutral. Keel is actually quoted as saying this will save the state money in the long run. And yet again, we still have a $7 billion unfunded liability from the first go around. I'm in agreement with you. There should be no discussion on an expansion or a reactivation of defined benefits until we've taken care of the past liability. That's got to be handled first. Even if it proves out that this is the greatest thing since sliced white bread, we've got to get the past liability taken care of before we move forward.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like I said, I will happily engage in the discussion and research it. But these are the types of long-term decisions that you really got to slow down, take a lot of time, look at your actuarials, look at your cost-benefit analysis, and then kind of make the decision from there. So,
right.
And that's just how, in fact, you'd want to do things to try to be as responsible as possible. So,
well, and not even talking about the state's fiscal note. There's still a regional or rural, fiscal note for the political subdivisions, the municipalities, the cities, those kind of things. Because if you go back to defined benefits, they're going to have to pay more than what they're paying right now. And again, as the committee said, the audit committee said, 31 entities right now are already in arrears for something that we stopped doing almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago, right? They're already in the doghouse over this, and you want to add more to it. To me, fine, have the discussion, but have an honest discussion about what the actual costs are going to be.
Yeah. And, and that's true to a lot of other spending items, and that's true to standard operating budgetary items, Michael. I mean, I always think it's best to try to have the numbers kind of upfront with people as possible, so you actually can know the costs up front, and then you can kind of weigh the decisions to the voters, afterward. So,
are you with us to the top of the hour? Can you stay to the top of the hour? Or are you?
oh, sure.
Okay, good. So we'll spend the last segment going over your bills, including your spending cap bill. But I want to talk for just a moment about the governor's new proposal to expand Medicare for postpartum care.
Yeah.
Because while I feel for people and I agree we should be a very much pro-life state, I question as to whether expanding the governmental program is the way to go. We already have a third of Alaskans right now. 270 something thousand Alaskans are already on Medicaid. And that's well over a third. It's approaching 40%. And to expand the idea to say, well, now we need to do another $2.6 million per annum for this specific care just seems like the wrong approach to me. It's not that I don't want those people to have care. It's that I question whether or not it's the government's responsibility to provide that care. What do you say?
Yeah, so we're going to kind of explore the complexities of this situation. So, so before we get into the actual optional service requests that the governor's making in the bill format, let's kind of overview what is going on in this Medicaid liability for the state, right? So keep in mind, during the pandemic, anyone who enrolled in Medicaid basically could not be disenrolled in Medicaid due to the emergency order. So that has effectively ballooned the amount of enrollees in the state of Alaska. At its highest, I think it was actually 37% of the total population. So it was actually over a third. But keep in mind that enhanced, it's called FMAP, federal matching percentage, that drops down starting May 1st, right? So basically, the additional funding for the Medicaid program that the state has been giving through enhanced FMAP ratchets down in this fiscal year for our budget. So that is a potential new liability of about $18 million a quarter that the state would now assume from federal responsibility. That's not currently reflected in the governor's budget released by OMB because it happened after that process, right? So keep in mind, before we do anything with Medicaid, we could potentially looking at an additional $70+ million that the state is going to have to fund on the program, depending on how the redeterminations of existing enrollees perform from the department starting April 1. So I guess if you're thinking in terms of the Medicaid expense in the billions, maybe this $2 million expense is not that big of a deal. I think all kind of spending is a big deal. And as we transition to the actual topic of the bill, what exactly are we talking about? So basically, the proposal is to take an existing classification of people and extend their coverage ability from 60 days to an entire year. Okay. So what does that effectively mean? Well, keep in mind when someone is enrolled in Medicaid, they are enrolled in all Medicaid services. Right. So what you are effectively doing is you are extending coverage for a group of people from 60 days to one entire year. Right. And that is any type of service that they incur while enrolled on the program. All right. So that's the practical aspect of what you're doing. So my question to the department.
Hold on a second. Hold your question because just to dumb it down for those of us in the back of the room, basically what you're saying is you're not just giving them the coverage and care for the postnatal, postpartum issue. They're they have the whole smorgasbord that's available to them.
Exactly, right. You
put them on, they can get everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're extending that for, up to 12 months. So that's step one is kind of identify what we're actually talking about, right? And then step two is identify the costs. And I think, healthcare is a good thing. I do employee benefits for a living. So I want people to have, great benefits and have access to quality healthcare, So step two is the cost. So the initial, I think, fiscal note on that on the bill is $2.6 million. There's a lot of kind of technical concerns I have that I've kind of conveyed to the department already, how they came up with that number, what the subgroup of people is. And really the concern that I have is if you add that service, are you unintentionally what's called cannibalizing your Medicaid expansion enrollees to keep this certain subgroup of folks enrolled in the program for a year? Right. So there's a lot of technical aspects I have that could potentially make this a cheaper idea or a lot more expensive idea. And either way, my first thought is, hey, let's get the actual cost on this first, and then let's actually discuss the merits of the proposal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I am waiting for the May 1st deadline, because then everybody who's currently on the program, there will have to be an analysis to whether or not they qualify, because it's been on hiatus since the pandemic began.
Yeah.
So we will see a lot of people drop off the program at that time, which is good, I think, because, it was supposed to be a short-term deal. But again, you're right. The most powerful law in the universe is the law of unintended consequences. And by putting somebody on here and giving them access to the entire cadre of Medicaid services could be a problem when this is all said and done. Will Stapp is our guest, House Representative for District 32 up in the interior. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We will be back. We're going to talk with him about his spending cap bill and the other things that he's going to focus on for the remainder of the session. We're going to continue with Will Stapp in just a moment. It is The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend.
Michael Duke Show.
Will, that was something that I hadn't even gotten into and considered on this. That this is not just a single program. This is not just, let's put all these women in this postpartum care program and they'll do it. No. That's going to cost 2.6, just that part of it. If you add all these people to that plan and then it expands to where they have access to everything, 2.6 is just the bottom of the budgetary amount, right? I mean, when it's all said and done.
Yeah, we'll see. And this is what I mean about asking the questions, right? So I've already done that. That's actually the subcommittee that I'm in charge of, so I'm just waiting to hear some answers, and then we'll go through the hearing process and identify more potential financial risk, or maybe even some potential financial savings. I mean, the benefit I do tell folks is I believe that through different sorts of mechanisms, there is a lot of potential to actually save a lot of money from on the state existing too, Michael. So it's not all doom and gloom,
Right.
I guess to me, the problem is maybe we can save $50 to $70 million on the state's liability on Medicaid by kind of changing the color of money, but which would make me really happy, because unfortunately people spend that money immediately. So, but at least I got to save some money, right?
Right. Well, this actually raises a bigger question. Should we be doing an analysis and an audit of Medicaid expenses in the state? Because there's a lot of anecdotal reporting and information about, abuse and fraud and waste in these programs and these systems. But it seems like nobody, every time we start talking about this over the last probably 5 years, there's been an immediate, we shouldn't do that. Don't do that. People need health care. And so should there be a audit and analysis of the system and, find deficiencies, find waste, find fraud, and plug those holes before we move on to expanding it?
Yeah, I mean, probably easier said than done. I'll kind of tell you the reason why. So I was joking with a couple of my representative friends regarding the DPA, Department of Public Assistance alone. You basically have a department that's in charge of a lot of these aspects that we're talking about, that is running their software on COBOL from the 90s, and it's got a huge vacancy rate. We got 9 separate systems, and quite honestly, if you probably paid a systems engineer a ton of money, he might not be able to design some worse process, even if you paid him millions of dollars to do so. So it's really difficult to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this stuff when you have so many immediate challenges. So my argument is kind of like, we have to look at the core functions of the government department, and we actually have to make them functional first, like something like SNAP, for example, because when we're not performing with our SNAP benefits, we get sued, and then that costs the state a lot more money. And then, everybody on this program probably knows where we go for money to pay for stuff, right? So incurring lawsuits that we have to settle, that's probably not our best interest, you know what I mean? So,
well, how about a modernization then? How about a modernization for the department and something like that, where you could query and pull information and get, that information in this day and age should be at your fingertips. You should have a few button presses and be able to see, okay, how much did the state pay for flights for Medicaid? How much do they pay for these procedures? How much did they pay for this?
Yep.
You should be able to have that at a push of a button instead of having big systems.
So on positive news, so that is one of our kind of targeted goals, and that is going to be the process of our subcommittee, hearings that are coming up this week. So, tune in, and we're going to go over all those things. We're going to talk about modernization of MIPS and how to effectively kind of take these core functions and move them into the let's call it the 2010s. At least we can get that far in technology, as opposed to the 2023. So we've identified those things, and folks working in the department are working on them, and that's kind of been the process that we're going to work on, and that I personally are spending a lot of time focusing on down here.
So can I take it from your discussion that you don't support the expansion of Medicaid without all the proper information, knowing what it's going to cost, and have all those? You can't support it until you have all those factors in place. Is that kind of where you stand?
Yeah, I would say we're going to do our due diligence, right? And like I said, if the numbers pencil out, it depends on, there are effectively cost savings too, long-term for the state if you catch medical conditions early. So factoring all that type of stuff, I'm not opposed to the governor's bill at all. I just want to know the numbers. And if the numbers make sense, I would probably even vote in favor of it, but I'm just not sure yet if that makes sense.
Well, it's going to be, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing how many people are going to drop off the rolls in May. That will have a big impact on whether or not you could. If you're going to lose 15 to 20% of the current enrollees, and you're going to add on 2% with Medicaid, with postpartum care, maybe that trade-off makes sense. But again, I guess my base question is still this: even if it made fiscal sense, is it the government's responsibility for people? For all mothers, for the postpartum. Is that really a function of government in your mind?
Yeah, that's, it doesn't even really matter how you answer that question, Michael, because we already do most of that anyways, right? So you can say, well, in any ideological kind of consensus, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. But, then you got to look at government and say, well, 37% of the population's on Medicaid already. So you kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
hold on a second. The Michael Duke Show. Okay, we're continuing right now. Will Stapp is our guest, House Representative for District 32. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into this now and talk about some of the bills that Will has put forward. The biggest one, I think probably the most important bill that we could see right now is going to be the spending cap bill that he has put forward. Will, you likened it earlier to bowling with the bumpers in the gutters, right? So you don't get a gutter ball. At least it keeps the rails, it keeps the framework in so that they don't overspend. I, for one, think that it's critical to have a spending cap. It's the only way that if new revenues are developed, that we'll be able to keep a constant downward pressure without them spending all of the PFD and more. What is the details of your bill, and what is to prevent it from becoming irrelevant like the current constitutional spending cap that we have right now?
Yeah, so basically, from a bird's eye view, what we are effectively attempting to do is we are attempting to replace the existing state's appropriation limit or spending cap that is indexed to, it's called population and inflation, and replace it with a spending cap that is indexed to private sector GDP. All right, so the fundamental concept is basically in Alaska, the certain industries, we only care about it because they're the ones that are the most important to us in terms of revenue for state types of programs. And if you can create a marriage between the private sector and state government, effectively folks who are elected after my voters decide to throw me out in the cold, or I don't want to do this anymore, new legislatures can come in and they are effectively have to consider private sector performance based on their decision making. So I would say it kind of stems from the overall understanding of, in a healthy economy, you have two types of economies, Michael. You have a public sector economy and a private sector economy. And everywhere you go, a healthy economy, the public sector always balances on the shoulders of the private sector, okay? So I call it the big man and the little man syndrome. So if you're trying to carry someone on your shoulders, ideally you want that person to weigh less and be less heavy than you are, because if you reverse the two, you're going to feel the weight of the heavy guy. Yeah. He's going to crush you down in the ground.
Right.
So even when you look at some of the most, let's call it socialistic countries in Western Europe, Sweden in the 1970s, for example, everybody kind of figured this out, and they started trimming the public sector on top and trying to make a robust private sector on the bottom. So even those countries that my Democrat friends kind of point to for mechanisms, they're a lot more market driven today than they were in the 60s and 70s for that reason, you know.
No, exactly right. I mean, they keep holding up the utopian. Even the Swedish prime minister was quoted as saying, "Stop saying that we're a socialist deal, because we're not. We're a free market. We've discovered the free market is really the only way to keep things growing and going." And that's been one of my biggest fears in the legislature, Will. In fact, Senator Rob Meyer and I have talked about this exclusively on the program several times. Is the problem is, one of the big utopian ideals that people keep talking about is, if we get the permanent fund to $100 million, it'll spin off enough money for the government to be self-sufficient and blah, blah. No, what it'll do is it'll disconnect the public economy from the private economy. It won't matter what the government does to the private economy, because they've got their own source of revenue and income, and it's just completely disconnected, and it doesn't matter. And that will cause a runaway growth in government, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would basically agree, because historically that's effectively what happens. So the other kind of mechanism here with the statutory and then, of course, constitutional cap of the bill is it's designed to basically take high revenue years and kind of force people to put money aside, for future years. I just had, the 10-year outlook briefing looking at OMB's projections for the budget. And I tell folks, hey, literally 10 years ago or 11 years ago now, our state had $16 billion in the CBR, and it had $10 billion in revenue. And one day I'll find the same 10-year finance projection meeting from 2011 or 2012, and we'll kind of see what everyone thought the state's finances would be back then today,
Yeah, exactly. One of my big questions is, on your proposed bill, is it a statutory change or is it a constitutional change?
Yeah, there are two changes. So there is a bill and there is a constitutional amendment, HJR2, right? So basically, they're designed to work hand in hand, where we would establish a new statutory limit in spending, but you could ratchet that up to the constitutional limit to ensure kind of waterfall capital spending, right? So basically, think of it in terms of trying to, understand that if you are going to build a healthy economy in Alaska, we do require capital spending on infrastructure, because that's kind of critical aspects of our state. In order to do mining, for example, we actually have to have, the way to get to the minerals so we can actually get them out of the earth and stuff like that. And that's even true if you believe in the carbon offsets, Michael. I tell folks it's hard to tell the environmentalists that you're going to cut all the trees down when you don't even have a road to get to the trees, right? So,
right, exactly. So the constitutional component of it, because again, the reason why I ask is we've seen in the past where some legislative bodies have passed a spending cap in statute at the early part of the session, and by the end of the session, they've already broken their own cap. And the legislature obviously, has very little respect for the statute. I mean, they've been ignoring the PFD statute and the 90-day session statute and everything else. So whatever has to go in there has to have the backing, the chutzpah, the teeth of being a constitutional component that they can't ignore. Does your bill do that? Does it put that into effect?
Yeah, there is a constitutional limit established, indexing it from, again, population inflation to private sector 5-year rolling average of private sector GDP performance, right? So that's the hard cap. Obviously, that's a super high vote threshold, but I tell folks, you just make the argument, you fight the good fight, and you allow kind of the votes to fall where they may. That makes sense, Michael.
Well, yeah, we've got to do that. I mean, we've got to stop avoiding it just because it might not pass. We have to have that open conversation, and we have to explain why it needs to be in the Constitution, which, I mean, I just made the argument for it. I mean, they have ignored statute time after time after time. If you put in just a spending cap that is strictly statutory, there'll be something where the votes come in and say, well, no, we're just going to ignore that because that just doesn't matter right now. We need something that puts the rails on the side. And like you said, I love the 5-year rolling average of the GDP. My original suggestion had been a 5-year rolling average of revenues, of past revenues, to give you an idea where we needed to go from there. But I mean, I think that makes the most sense instead of these pie in the sky budgetary processes that to me have never made any sense.
Yeah, and keep in mind, so kind of what I tell my Democrat friends in the building, Michael, too, is, hey, if you're growing the private sector, if you have a robust private sector economy with high GDP growth, and you're looking at adding more liabilities to government, and if you're looking at new taxes, a more robust private sector allows you to do all those things more efficiently, right? So I don't really subscribe to that type of stuff. But again, my argument to my friends is, hey, you really want to get on board in private sector growth, because if you need more avenues to tax people, that's the best way to get it, right?
Sure. Yeah. You want the economy to be booming. So if you do put taxes, you make more money, right? That's the argument to those on the left, the progressives that are more inclined to generate new revenue with taxes. What's the response been quickly here, Will, of your bill so far? What kind of response are you getting?
Oh, I think it's so a lot of it's good, some of it's mixed. A lot of folks are, some of them are taking the approach from the 2021 fiscal working group, talking about, kind of simultaneous, instantaneous reform. And I don't oppose those types of things, Michael. I just say, hey, I'm one guy and 40 in the House and 20 in the Senate, and I can't do everything because I'm new, So
right.
If other people want to propose other ideas, more power to them. I say I just haven't seen any other bills yet, right? So
right. I think there's 7 components to the fiscal policy working group, and of course their unanimous argument was they all have to be done together. Well, you've got one. Now you just need to find 6 other legislators to get the 6 other pieces, right? I mean, and that would be ideal if we could do it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm pretty busy right now. Again, trying to get my head around the very large kind of operating budgets and trying to protect the state from unneedless financial risk. So I don't really foresee myself carrying a ton of bills, because I wouldn't do a very good job, because I quite frankly don't have the time to carry a ton of bills.
Yeah, exactly. Will Stapp, House District Rep for District 32. Will, thanks for coming on board today. Appreciate your thoughtful commentary.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, hold the line for just a second. Folks, we're out of time. Tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story, The Michael Duke Show. Be kind, love one another, live well. Will, I got to say that I'm pleasantly surprised and impressed with, what you've come up with down there and your answers. And I hope that you'll continue to give that same thoughtful analysis to everything that comes across your desk. I love your point about the fact that you're only one guy, because we've criticized that on this show where, there's only the spending cap bill? Shouldn't we have this and this and this? Not that we were trying to say that you should put it all out, but you're right. We should be encouraging your fellow legislators that if we're going to follow the fiscal policy working group plan, which the Kathy Tilton has said that that's what they want to use as a blueprint. Ben Carpenter's talked about it, that we need 6 other legislators to each take a component of that plan and then put it together. And maybe you could create an omnibus bill at the end or whatever with all the different pieces of legislation for a final bill. But I mean, congratulations to you on at least tackling the spending portion of it. I want to give you a chance to, the last bite at the apple, so to speak, last minute here or two. Anything else you want to finish up with? I give you the floor here.
Oh, not really. I mean, always a pleasure to be on and kind of chat with folks, and always try to articulate well and treat people well and kind of wrap your head around ways that you can try to kind of save money, and then maybe other people will spend it all, but at least I get to go home and tell my constituents that, hey, I actually got to find some money to save down here. So
right, I did my best. I tried to do my part, and that's the problem. It's why I would really never like to be a legislator, because you can do what you can do, but you got to try and wrangle 59 other cats into the same sack, and it's not going to be easy, that's for sure. All right, well, Will Stapp, thank you, sir, for coming on board. Good luck, and we'll talk with you again soon. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Michael.
Appreciate you coming on and being part of it today. All right, folks, we are out of time for today. We got more coming up. We're going to continue tomorrow with Brad Keithley, Chris Story. I appreciate you guys being part of it today. Don't forget to like and share. Don't forget to like and follow our YouTube channel. Subscribe and ring the bell. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show. Buddy.
Bye.